When you think about elemental magic, you probably think of natural elements like the periodic table or something more standard like fire, water, earth, and so on. But have you ever actually stopped to think about what elements of magic actually mean? Tsutomu Satou did, and he came up with a different answer. The world Tsutomu created in Irregular at Magic High School is one where magic in and of itself is a scientific phenomenon, and magic is created through the use of a CAD, a casting assistant device. It's like using your smartphone, smartwatch, or other signal broadcasting device to create an electronic signal to intercept and modify psionic signals to create magic. And in the 2090s, where this series takes place, electronic capability of wireless alchemy is commonplace. Neat. But magic needs to be redefined in order to exist within a series that is futuristic sci-fi high fantasy Japan. So the elements of magic were reimagined and redefined. This modern magic is categorized by actions, and it's divided into 4 major categories with 8 major subtypes in one of them, and are primarily composed of the combination of cardinal codes and magic sequences. But first we need to define some terms. To start with, there are 2 types of particles that are influenced by this technology to create magic: psions and pushyons. Psions, written with the characters for thought and child, are non-physical particles that come under the dimension of psychic phenomenon, an information element that records the result of cognizance and thought. Psions are the manifestations of intention and thought. Pushyons, which aren't actually introduced until the Visitor arc, are substanceless particles, non-physical entities that come under the dimension of psychic phenomenon. They are similar to psions, but they manifest from the emotions of the intention and thought. You could say pushyons are much closer to actual psychic abilities than they are magic. Magic power itself is defined in 3 categories. Interference strength, the strength of a sequence for rewriting ADOS. Capacity, written calculation scale, being the magic tolerance, and processing speed, being the speed at which the magic rewrites the ADOS. Now this term ADOS has come up twice. Written with the kanji for individual, separate, feelings, report, and body, it refers to the event where information of the target is temporarily overwritten. Information is associated with events. If the information is rewritten, the event is rewritten. As the nature of phenomenon is written in psions, modifying these will result in real-world events being temporarily modified as well. This will largely be explained through the process of systematic magic, which will be explained later. And there are 2 primary ways that magic is cast. The first is through technique. Tatsuya Shiba makes ample use of one of these techniques, called flash casting. The way that it's explained is that the sequence is stored as an image in the memory, so it can bypass the first 2 of 4 steps, making it extremely fast. But it's also extremely limited. You can think of it as a perfect recall of a QR code. That code in memory translates to a magic sequence that then creates phenomenon. To talk about a technique from Miyuki, she uses cyclical breathing. When continuously using the same magic, cyclical breathing refers to the space between when one magic ends and the next one begins. The less overlap between the first and second magic, the less stress is placed on the magician. The other way to cast magic is with a casting assistant device, generally referred to as a CAD. They come in all shapes, sizes, and designs, from generic use ones that can handle just about anything you put in them, even if they're not particularly powerful, to specialized ones that only handle a single spell at a time, preloaded. The devices incorporate synthetic materials, artificially manufactured neurons, to convert psion signals into electric signals, using the psions from the magic ritual, the sequence, to produce a collection of electronic magic, the activation sequence. And that is the rewriting of ADOS. CADs allow for the processing of all necessary components for magic in a single moment. Press a few buttons, punch in a code, and now you're a wizard. To use fantasy terms, it's a spell focus, much like chants, talismans, staves, tomes, hand seals. You get the idea, making most of the vocal and somatic components of a spell automatic. And now to get into the actual definitions of magic. The story explains magic as the 4 great systems and 8 major types: systematic magic, non-systematic magic, outer systematic magic, and perception magic, sometimes just called ESP. Systematic magic containing 8 separate categories based on the effects, and most magic is comprised of 2 or more of these different types. The first of which being acceleration, magic that involves accelerating or decelerating a target, hence the name, directly altering the inertia of an object. The second being weight, reducing or increasing the mass of an object. The third of which being movement. While acceleration only affects the inertia, movement affects an object's velocity and vector. Acceleration can't change the path of an object any more than movement can speed it up, but they can be used together. The fourth being oscillation, magic that involves the vibration of a target. Waves can be produced, controlled, or dampened. Temperatures can be increased or reduced by altering the vibration of molecules. Fifth is convergence, magic that selectively isolates a target within a target area, like creating a vacuum. Sixth is dispersion, defined as magic that interferes with the movement and interaction of elementary and composite particles. Manipulating gamma rays would be considered dispersal type magic because the magic itself is interfering with the light particles. Seventh is absorption, affecting the interaction between particles and energy, like how much light something reflects or how much oxygen iron absorbs before it becomes rust. And the eighth type is release. It interferes with the movement and interaction of subatomic and composite particles. Examples of these types in action: Mayumi using hail particles, a combination of acceleration, convergence, and release type magics. Freeze flame, a magic made of acceleration and oscillation. Optical magic, a specialty of Honoka, combining convergence and absorption. Disruption, a dispersion type spell that blocks incoming spells like a barrier. And the majority of magic functions off of these 8 types being rewritten in real time, and that is magic. But the other 3 great systems. Perception having to do with exactly as its name says, perception. Tatsuya's elemental sight is a perception magic, as is Angelina's parade magic. But while elemental sight allows Tatsuya to effectively see into the future where phenomenon is going to be, parade is about illusions, causing people to see things that aren't there, or hide things that are. Mizuki's crystallize are also a type of perception magic, though that isn't something she actively has to use. The third system being non-systematic magic. It does not aim to alter the phenomenon temporarily by rewriting the body of information associated with the ADOS. Instead, it directly controls the scion itself. Unlike normal magic, these are usually affected by distance, as the scions travel through real space instead of the information dimension. Counter magics are generally non-systematic. Antonite, cast jamming, gram dispersion, and demolition. There are other examples that aren't counter magic, but it's generally the idea of raw magic in and of itself, instead of the physical dimension being affected by it. And the final of the 4 great systems is outer systematic magic, which does not manipulate physical objects, but the spiritual level itself. Some examples of this kind of magic would be manipulating spirits like Mikihiko does, mind reading and mind control. You could inflict pain without a wound, you could cause people to ignore your presence even if you're right in front of them. An example of how this would work compared to systematic magic, Miyuki more than once uses the spell Niflheim, a wide area deceleration oscillation type magic. It causes an entire area to freeze over. However, she has another type of freezing magic that is outer systematic, and it's called Kokaitis. Unlike her other frost magic, this doesn't have a noticeable effect on the surface, such as freezing or cold temperatures. Rather than the target's physical body freezing, it's their consciousness or soul that is frozen, which comes in extremely handy against a non-physical entity like the parasite in the Visitor arc. But there are 2 more categories that aren't part of this general definition. Ancient magic capable of all sorts of things, but most of it being specialized beyond the capabilities of modern magic. It's slower and more focused, and practitioners generally don't use CADs, instead using talismans or other traditional foci. Spirit magic, generally understood as external or outer systematic in nature, is considered an ancient magic, as well as ninjutsu, for at least 2 different examples. And the last on the list being superpowers, magic that directly causes phenomenon without activation sequences or any other ritual, unlike modern or ancient magic. These superpowers are limited to one type of magic per user, and in only one way. They are highly specialized. Tatsuya's regrowth spell is considered a superpower. It gives him the ability to restore from backup anything at least 24 hours. And it's seriously overpowered. Miyuki's bodyguard, Minami Sakurai, specializing in the dispersal type neutron barriers, sees Tatsuya restore a tower and says this:
"Was this the work of a human? Should humans truly be allowed to possess and wield such astounding power?"
But superpowers are also extremely rare, named users in the series only being Tatsuya and Mayumi, with some parasites and parasite dolls also having this ability, but they're not even of the same plane of existence. And those are the elements behind the modern magic system of Irregular Magic High School. I find this complete redefinition of magic to be fascinating, fitting it into a slightly futuristic sci-fi society. Tsutomu could have just fallen back on the classical understanding of elemental magic, but instead he thought up a system that doesn't rely on chemical composition of a material being manipulated, instead focusing on how the material is being manipulated as the elements of the magic. Which actually makes a lot of sense when you consider the interaction between the user, the CAD, and the scions, which realistically might be closer to psionics, but it's still presented as spellcraft through technology. I think it's super interesting, and if you made it this far into the video, maybe you do too. I am the NBT. This has been the Noble Weeaboo. Like or don't, sub or don't, and thank you for watching. There are very few times in which a fantasy series will actually go into the deep and explain to you how magic works. And the way this magic system is explained is so unbelievably creative, I just had to talk about it.